On July 1st, the New York Rangers ended up making three pretty big moves as they were quite busy. They first off went out there and signed arguably the top free agent available and definitely the top free agent defenseman available, of course, and that is Vladislav Gavrikov to a 7-year deal worth $7 million per season. And when you really kind of compare it to what some other players kind of got paid in this market, I think it was honestly a very good deal for this Rangers team, and honestly it was a bit team friendly as well. So I think overall that was a great sign there to start things off. The Rangers got a great top pairing caliber defenseman to possibly go alongside Adam Fox and obviously to help shore up the left side of this defense core. Then they went out there and we heard that they were kind of facilitating a type of trade there to send and kind of have a deal signed with K'Andre Miller, and then they were going to ship him off over to the Carolina Hurricanes. We now, of course, know that that deal ended up getting signed there, and it is an 8-year deal worth $7.5 million that the Rangers are signing with K'Andre, and then they're instantly shipping him off, of course, to the Carolina Hurricanes in a sign and trade kind of deal there where the Rangers are getting back some pretty good assets. But they also are now, of course, re-signing and giving a new contract out to one of their top RFAs in Will Cuylle. And, of course, the two kind of big ones were Will Cuylle and K'Andre Miller, and we now know the destinations of both those players. Will be rejoining and staying with the Rangers, of course, and we're going to see, of course, K'Andre Miller now be a Carolina Hurricane, still remain in the division there, but, of course, will be with a new team. And I think, personally, not going to dive into too much of the K'Andre Miller side of things there, but I'm quite happy we did not pay him that much, and I am quite happy we did pay Will Cuylle, though. I think a 2-year deal worth $3.9 million, which is what he signed for back with the Rangers, I think is a very reasonable contract that makes a lot of sense. He, of course, is an RFA coming off of a pretty big breakout season, but with him only having that kind of one real kind of big year in the NHL of really having that big impact there, he wasn't quite up for having a kind of monster contract. Obviously, he wasn't quite ready to maybe sign that big, massive kind of long-term deal. But I think after this 2-year deal, he very well might be ready to do that. So I think that's where the Rangers are going to get to kind of see what they get out of Will Cuylle over the next 2 seasons here. He had a solid 2023-24 rookie season there, playing on the fourth line mostly, got a bit of time up in the top 9 here and there, but for the most part was, on that kind of fourth line there, not playing alongside the most skillful players there, had a decent kind of point total there, all right, definitely was quite physical, of course, in his rookie season, but then going into this past season there in 2024-25, that's where we saw him take a massive step up in his all-around game. It wasn't just kind of one area of his game. I would say it was pretty much every aspect of his game. I mean, physically, he kind of remained at that same level there, still being, one of the top hitters in the entire NHL, looking to hit everything that kind of moves out there, which I absolutely love to see out of a young, big physical, tough forward. But we also saw him take I would say, massive step up in his defensive game where he got to see, a lot more kind of power play opportunities there, really kind of got a role there, especially at the end of the season there, really got an opportunity, and I thought did a pretty good job as well. We also saw him take a pretty big step up offensively, where he put up some absolutely phenomenal numbers, especially for someone who can be, a big, tough, physical kind of energy kind of winger out there, but can also, be a good defensive forward as well, and obviously can contribute some good point totals as well. And I think going forward, he definitely has the potential to be around that kind of point per game type player while bringing a good two-way game there, being a good defensive forward, definitely well above average. I don't think he's ever going to win a Selke, but can definitely be, I would say, one of the kind of upper echelon kind of, defensive wingers in the league, like one of the better ones. Might not be a top kind of 5-1, but definitely could be up there, could be a good penalty killer. And I think with that offense there, being around a point per game, putting up around 30-something goals there, 40, 50 assists, something around there, I definitely think is quite possible for someone of this caliber. Maybe he can put up about 30, 35 goal season here and there. It's definitely possible with his skill level there. He's got a good kind of nose for the net there, more of a shoot-first player, and I like that as well. That's something this Rangers team has kind of, maybe been lacking a bit in past seasons, where this team hasn't had a lot of guys who are just going to kind of shoot first and maybe aren't going to pass as much with, guys like Zibanejad. We know how good of a shot he can have, but a lot of the time this season especially, and in past season as well, we're seeing him trying to make that extra pass there where maybe he just take that shot. So having a guy like Will Cuylle, who is more of that kind of, shot first player, I think is quite nice. And I just am such a big fan of this player. He is exactly kind of what this team has been lacking for so many seasons now. It's, some of that toughness up front there. And, yes, we've had that kind of stuff in the bottom 6 at moments, but I think having that in your top 6 there, when out of your guys that are playing some of the top minutes on your team there, some of the top kind of minutes among forwards especially, you want some of those guys to be able to bring some good toughness and physicality and a bit of grit and some energy out there as well. And a guy like JT Miller, I think, is a perfect kind of role model and leader for someone like Will Cuylle, who can definitely hopefully learn a few things from JT. I mean, JT's been a guy who's been producing at a great level offensively in this league for many years now, many seasons, but he's also one of those players who can, be a great defensive forward as well. And obviously he does play center, so not the exact same thing there, but he's also, a tougher, kind of grittier, physical, kind of, hard-nosed kind of, forward there where he can contribute offensively and defensively, but also bring some of that toughness and energy and kind of, bite to the game that, this team needs more of. So having a guy like that be a possible kind of leader and mentor for a guy like Will Cuylle, I think is also a pretty big bonus. Vincent Trojic obviously brings a bit of that as well. We've got guys like Edstrom and Rempe and Carrick who definitely bring a lot of that as well. They're on the fourth line, obviously, but I think having some of that in the top six as well is definitely very nice to have. And at this point in the offseason, now that the Rangers, ended up, of course, getting to sign, Gavrikov there, they got their top pairing kind of defenseman, that top four kind of guy that this team desperately needed to add in. They made the trades with guys like Kreider and Keandre Miller. They got to sign back their top RFA and Cuylle and also, sign back guys like Rempe and Edstrom. So they've got pretty much all their heavy lifting done. There's not too many big moves left to be made. I think at this point now, you're going to see a lot more kind of depth signings there. We already saw one on July 1st as well. Nice kind of depth move there, a former Devil. Can't remember his name off the top of my head right now, but nice kind of depth player there. Will probably be in the AHL for the most part and can be maybe one of those call-up forwards. He did play like 50-plus games for the Devils last season, but we're going to see some depth moves there. We're going to see some kind of minor signings there. I think, obviously, the third line center spot is still a bit of a question, but heading into next season there with Brodzinski and Juuso Parssinen, I think it's definitely a possibility there where we just kind of, let those two kind of guys fight for it, and also having Zibanejad out there is kind of nice. So we'll see what happens there with that spot, but I wouldn't be terribly surprised if this team doesn't make a big move there and maybe just opts to, kind of run it next season there. Like I said, with those three kind of guys, they're running for that spot possibly. And, I do want to see Zibanejad more on the wing, but I think if he's your actually kind of centerman there and you stay in the wing, that's ideally my kind of preference. But, we'll have to wait and see because the cap right now with the Rangers kind of where they're at, we don't have a lot of wiggle room. I'm going to be honest there after making these kind of deals. So it's going to be tight there. They're going to want to make some more kind of depth moves, like I said. So after those moves are kind of made there and all the guys are accounted for in the roster, there's not going to be a lot left to go out there and get a real kind of good, impactful third line center. So you very well, like I said, just might run into next season there with mainly having guys like Juuso Parssinen and Brodzinski kind of fighting for that spot there with, Zibanejad kind of lurking there as well, possibly to maybe get some time there. But I think for the most part, I would rather see a guy like Zibanejad on wing because he did have a much better kind of season there, the rest of the season there, once he did make that switch over to wing. So I do think that's probably what's best for him going forward and also for what's best for this Rangers team. But at the end of the day, it's nice to see Chris Drury making some big moves there, obviously trading away Kreider, Keandre Miller, Gavrikov, signing him, signing back Cuylle there. He's made some good moves this offseason so far. We'll see, what happens going forward in the rest of this offseason, but I think overall it's been pretty decent so far by Chris Drury, and obviously hiring a guy like Mike Sullivan as well to be the next head coach was not a bad move at all. But anyways, definitely in the comment section down below, comment your thoughts on today's video. Do you like this signing here of Will Cuylle coming back on a 2-year deal worth $3.9 million? Do you like the Keandre Miller trade? Do you like the Gavrikov signing? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. And also, of course, definitely don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button for daily New York Rangers content. I'll catch you next one. And let's go Rangers.